Hey everybody, Austin back again with another long play video. Today, it's going to be the arcade version of Double Dragon on an actual arcade machine. Yeah, this is actually something I've been wanting to try for a while, recording arcade footage from my arcade machine. Yeah, I just haven't gotten around to it. So, I actually received this Double Dragon board, a JAMA board, in the mail last week. And I figured, hey, you know, let's do a long play on Double Dragon, see how it turns out. And here we are now. The footage isn't the best, but that's kind of the nature of shooting a computer monitor, or, I'm sorry, a CRT television or monitor with a camcorder. A cheap camcorder, mind you. I don't have a high-end camcorder, so the footage isn't nearly as sharp as it could be. But for those of my longtime subscribers, this is actually sort of going to be a throwback for you guys, because for those new folks that are subscribed to me, in case you didn't know, when I first started making YouTube videos, and in that first year and a half to maybe even close to 2 years, I was shooting my camcorder at the television and doing just casual talk and play videos, casual reviews, just talking and playing about a game and whatnot. And the quality was really bad. Some people really liked it. I personally didn't really care for it, but you know, with arcade cabinets, you don't really have another way to record footage. There's really only one way, for the most part anyway. There might be some workarounds on some setups, but here it's, yeah, I have to shoot it with my camcorder. So here we are, a nice little throwback for those of you old-time fans that have been watching my channel for a while. Now, in that beginning portion of the video, what you saw was I actually wanted to play second player purposely, because what's actually kind of funny is I have a 25-inch monitor inside this cabinet. It's a Killer Instinct 2 cabinet. And Double Dragon doesn't take up the whole screen, and I don't know why. It's the only board I have that doesn't take up the full screen. Mortal Kombat takes up the full screen. My Sega STV board with Radiant Silvergun and Sukiya Gorentai, they take up the full screen. Obviously, Killer Instinct 2 takes up the full screen, but Double Dragon does not. And I haven't yet researched into why it's not taking up the whole television, or I want to say television, but the monitor. But yeah, I've only had the board for about a week, and I haven't looked into it yet. But that's going to be on my list of things to do. But, you know, the reason I wanted to play as the second player is because due to it not taking up the entire screen, the right-hand quadrant of the monitor is completely blank. And so that actually gave me room to sort of sit outside of the camera view, and I was able to sort of play at an angle. So you'd get the whole gameplay footage, but you wouldn't see me like looking over or tapping the buttons or things like that. This was actually a pretty cramped experience, though. I'm actually playing at about a 45-degree angle, and towards the end of the game, I actually make some slip-ups. I actually, to go back a step, I replaced both joysticks on this arcade cabinet just over the weekend. And so the joysticks are very, very touchy. And so with that combined with me playing at a 45-degree angle, there are instances where I'm not like going left or right appropriately. I'm going diagonally down or up or something like that when I don't actually mean to. For the most of the game, though, I try to just move in left, right, up, down movements, just a four-way fashion. But, you know, because of the touchy nature of the joysticks, I do make some mistakes, and you'll see actually right before the final level, I just walk off a cliff, and I don't mean to. I just do because you know there's not a whole lot of room to move, and the joystick is so touchy. It was, you know, it was my fault, but it was also kind of difficult playing at that angle. So kind of a fun little experience. I haven't had to do anything like that in a while. You know, can like completely change how I have to position myself when I play the game just to record the video. So that was kind of funny. But this video, I actually do manage to beat the whole game without continuing. I actually get an extra life about halfway through. This is only set to 2 life play. So basically, you get a life to start off, and then one more when you die. But you do get extra lives, and I do get an extra life right before the final stage in the game. And so that actually helped me, because if I didn't get that extra life, I probably would have had to continue once. So yeah, I mean, Double Dragon's actually not a long game at all. It's a super fun game, though. You know, ironically, I never actually played this game in the arcades. The first version of Double Dragon I ever played was the 8-bit Nintendo version, which I absolutely loved back in the day. I still love that game. That's a great version of Double Dragon, despite it being different. I would later get the Sega Master System version, which I also like a lot. It's also a great version. But it wasn't until about 2000 when I got my first arcade machine, when I was junior year of high school. Actually, that summer of between my junior year and my senior year of high school is when I got my arcade cabinet. My first one, it was an old Street Fighter II JAMA cabinet. And actually, I think it was a converted cabinet as well. I don't think it was an original Street Fighter II cabinet. And when I got that machine, the guy actually had a bunch of boards that he gave me with it. And one of them was a Double Dragon. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think he only gave me Double Dragon 2. And I ended up buying the first Double Dragon shortly afterwards because I enjoyed the second arcade version so much. And so that was actually my first taste back then, about 2000, with the actual arcade version of this game. And yeah, here we are now, pretty much, 12 to 13 years later. I finally have another JAMA cabinet, JAMA compatible cabinet, and I finally have the Double Dragon board, and we're playing it right now. So, a really fun game, though. I mean, I was actually blown away by how enjoyable the arcade version was. I mean, naturally, it was going to be good, right? Because it was a super popular arcade game. These are actually pretty common JAMA boards, as far as I'm aware. Not as much so now as they were 10 to 15 years ago when nobody wanted arcade hardware. But it's still one of the more common games out there you can get. And but yeah, I mean, I had a blast with the game. And going through this playthrough, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, there's actually a lot of variety to this game, despite its simplicity. When I'm playing through this game, I try to play relatively safe. I try to abuse the elbow, which is basically a combination of hitting jump and your punch button together. And you'll just, bam, backwards do an elbow. And it has a long reach. And you can actually, if you stick it out as an enemy is getting up, that hitbox is still registering as a hit with the elbow. And so it's kind of unbalanced, it's kind of broken, but it's a really good safe maneuver, and you see me doing that all the time in the game. But what I was thinking earlier, I went back and played another round afterwards, and I was like, you know what? You can play this game so many different ways. Like, here, I'm just elbowing to try to play it safe, to try to beat the game without continuing. But if you want to incorporate punches, which is kind of risky, it feels really good though. You just do a quick 1-2 and then uppercut. Really good stuff. And if you want, you can try to play with just the weapons. Try to run through the levels with the baseball bat or something like that. Which I don't do because it's risky, but that's kind of the fun in Double Dragon. You can play it in so many different ways. You can just rely on your punches and kicks. Again, I kind of just rely on... When I'm playing serious, I try to rely on the elbow and then sitting on top of an enemy and trying to kick him as he gets up, and then that'll basically follow into the kneeing option where you pummel them in the head a few times with your knee, and then you can either kick them back in the other direction or sort of throw them over you, which is pretty cool as well. So, Double Dragon is actually a really short game. We're already halfway through the game. But it's so much fun. It's still a great game. Lots of slowdown, unfortunately, so that's a little hard to get around these days or get used to these days. But if you can get past that, the game is still a blast. It plays great. It's a lot of fun. It's just good fun, and despite the short length, there's a good amount of variety in terms of what you can do, and flexibility, I guess I should say, in terms of how you want to actually play the game, and that can keep things fresh over the years. Great game. As you saw in the beginning of the video, though, I actually was purposely beating up on my opponent because I wanted to play as the player 2 side for the reasons I explained earlier. And that was a fun option as well. If you play this game with the second player, you guys can really get into it with each other. And you have to be careful because you can do damage to one another. And I always thought that was a great aspect of this game. Now, the first NES Double Dragon didn't have that because, well, it was a single-player only game in the main campaign or arcade mode. Double Dragon 2 on the NES, there was actually an option where you could play where you would do damage to your teammate. There was also a mode, I believe, in the NES Double Dragon 2 where you didn't do damage, so it was at least an option there. But in this game, it's always there. There might be a dip switch to turn it off, dip switch setting to turn it off, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it that far. But yeah, really, really fun game. It's pretty easy to see, I think, why it was so popular back in the day. I mean, even the music is still great. I mean, and this is actually where I die, by the way. Oh, stupid me. That was just idiotic. That wasn't supposed to happen. And so yeah. And you know what? There was actually something else I noticed when I was playing through this specific playthrough. Is as you deal more damage to enemies, I noticed that it actually takes them longer to get back up from the ground. And that was actually a little detail I never noticed back in the day. And so that guy is basically dead. If you notice, it took him a while to get back up. And now this guy is almost dead too. It's taking him a while. There, he's dead. Now those guys, when you say you elbow them, they come back up almost right away. Like, watch how fast this guy gets up. See? Now, watch the fight. The more damage I do, it'll start taking him more time to get up. See? It's taking him a little bit more. It's literally like milliseconds, you know? But, you know, as you do more damage, see, now it's taking like a second for him to get back up. Now he's almost dead. There, he's gone. A really cool little feature that I never noticed in the past. And which is actually kind of clever for a game, you know, of this age. I don't think you really saw things like that too much back then. And this is my least favorite part in the game, and this is such terrible design. But I luckily got through it with only getting hit once. Sometimes you can get absolutely screwed and just, you know, get a game over completely. And this is funny. The dynamite actually kills the guy that's waiting. That was nice. That was not planned on my part at all, I should say. But that was really cool. And I think I get hit here. Yeah. What you're supposed to do is actually go through and jump. And if you jump at that part, I'm pretty sure that you don't get hit by the spears. So it's another little tricky part. But fortunately, I think it's actually a little bit shorter than it is in other versions of the game. So I'm trying to get rid of this guy because in the next part you have to fight 2 Abobos, and you have really limited amounts of space to fight these guys. And technically I think you might be able to just activate one and then the second one comes later. I don't know if that's even possible, but that's something to think about when you get to this part. But this is actually a little tricky section even with the elbow because there's a little wiggle room. And in the classic beat 'em up fashion, probably actually pioneered by this game, is, you know, in beat-em-ups, you kind of want to stay on a slightly higher plane and just let the enemy sort of walk up into your punches and your attacks. But being that there's so little, like, wiggle room here, you can't really do that. So, yeah. So this part can actually be kind of tricky, and if you fall down, it's instant death. There's spikes down there. It's basically a spike pit, so... But yeah, we're at the final boss already, guys, and this is actually a cool little section because they throw a lot of enemies at you, and the game starts slowing down big time, but, you know, it's always a fun fight. The main title theme kicks in, which is arguably the best track in the game. It's an iconic video game track for those of us that grew up in the 80s anyway, or were born in the early to mid 80s, and played a lot of games like Double Dragon on the NES back in the day, so... iconic theme, still holds up great, very catchy, good stuff. A good way to end the game too. They didn't just end it with like some boring track. It's like, yeah, the title theme's back in. So yeah, I'm playing it super safe because I don't have any lives left, so I'm gonna make sure that I get through this without, you know, dying. I wanted to try to beat the game without getting a continue or a game over. And actually, when I first got the board, I hooked it up, and once I got the dip switches set right, I went ahead and ran through the game. It took me about the same amount of time, obviously, because it's not a long game, but unfortunately I did get a game over the first time I played it, so But this time I did not. Although if it wasn't for that kind of crappy death on, you know, mission 3, that death that was completely my fault, yeah, I would have had an extra life here. So here's the final boss. And he's actually pretty vicious if you let him hit you. I think it's pretty much like instant death. He's got a big machine gun, and yeah. Fortunately, he's actually not as much of a threat as he is in the NES version of Double Dragon. Because in that game, you don't have the elbow to rely on. I mean, you do have the elbow, but it kind of... despite it being really powerful in that version, it kind of sucks. It kind of leaves you open. And a lot of times you'll hit an enemy, or like an abobo, you'll try to elbow them, and you'll elbow them, but they'll also hit you. So you don't really have any moves in that version of the game that are kind of broken, like in this game. Like, no free elbows, no long distance with elbows, nothing like that in the NES version. So that final boss is actually pretty tricky in the NES game, and I remember actually trying to do a long play video on that specific version a long time ago, and I kept dying at the final boss. And in that game, you don't actually get any continues, if I recall correctly, so, you know, there's no continuing. So, tough little game. I'll eventually do a long play on that game, or a live let's play. But, yeah. So these are the staff credits. And, yeah, you know, I might end up doing this again in the future, guys, if I get the Double Dragon 2 PCB. That's something I definitely want to get again, because, again, that was one of the first boards I got with my original arcade cabinet back in 2000 or so. So, and it would be great to run through the arcade version of Double Dragon 2 again. That was a good game as well, but if I remember correctly, it had way more slowdown. If you want to play this game without slowdown, you can actually get it, or, oh, I'm sorry, you can't get it anymore, but you were able to get it at one point in time on Xbox 360 through Xbox Live Arcade, and I did as well. So that's actually a pretty fun version with pretty much no slowdown. So, alright guys, I want to go ahead and wrap it up here. I want to say thanks for watching. Again, long play of Double Dragon. Probably not going to have any other long plays anytime soon. This was just sort of an off-the-cuff, like, unplanned long play video. But if you enjoyed this and you're new to my channel, be sure to subscribe. I've got other Let's Plays on the way and on a frequent basis. And to everybody else that is already subscribed, as usual, I'd like to say thanks for watching. And until next time, take it easy, guys.